I've spent most of my life feeling invisible in my own family, and looking back, I can see it started almost from the day I was born. I'm Ethan, the middle child, and I grew up in a modest suburban house in New Jersey. Our house was the kind where you could hear your neighbors through the thin walls, the smell of freshly baked cookies always drifting from the kitchen, and the living room constantly cluttered with hand-me-down toys and old magazines. My parents, in their eyes, were always fair, but to me, fairness never looked like equality. Lauren, my older sister, was the perfect one. She had this magnetic energy that drew every compliment, every spotlight, straight A's, piano recitals, varsity soccer games. The whole town knew her name by the time she was 13. And my younger brother, Max, was the baby of the family, who could do anything and still get hugs, attention, and a golden sticker for the most ridiculous things. And me? I existed in the background, like a shadow, always watching, always trying to measure up, always coming up short. I remember one afternoon when I was 8. I had spent weeks working on a painting for the county fair, a messy, colorful forest scene, my proudest creation at that age. I carefully wrapped it, brought it home, and ran to show my mom. "Look, I got first place," I shouted, holding up the slightly smudged trophy. Mom glanced at it, gave a polite smile, and said, "That's nice, Ethan, but did you see Lauren's science project? She's going to MIT, you know." I stared at the trophy, my small fingers clutching it, feeling the warmth of pride drain away like water through a sieve. The next day, I put it on my dresser, away from everyone's view, almost embarrassed that I had dared to succeed. That moment, though small, stuck with me, the first clear proof that my achievements would never be enough in that house. Birthdays were worse. Lauren's parties were extravagant, with dozens of friends, balloons, and gifts that seemed endless. Mine? Cake at the kitchen table, maybe a toy from Target, and there, isn't this nice, nod from my parents. Max's birthdays were chaos in the best way. Gifts, hugs, selfies for Instagram, everyone laughing at his jokes. And me? I learned to smile politely, nod, thank people, and quietly slip into my room afterward. My small victories, unremarkable, invisible. Even ordinary days were full of comparisons. My dad would casually remark, "Ethan, why can't you focus like Lauren?" Or, "Maybe you should take notes from Max on how to behave." And every time, it wasn't just criticism. It was a reminder that I was the middle child, the one who didn't matter. I started doubting everything I did, not because I failed, but because it felt like failing in their eyes. School was my escape. There, no one knew about Lauren's perfect grades or Max's adorable charm. I could be just Ethan, and sometimes that was enough. I made friends, I played sports, I worked hard on my projects. But every time I brought up my successes at home, it was dismissed, minimized, or compared unfavorably to my siblings. Slowly, I learned a pattern. Achievement wasn't for joy, it was for validation, and I wouldn't get that at home. Even now, decades later, I can still feel that ache, the feeling that I was living my entire childhood in a house that celebrated everyone else, while I quietly folded myself into the corners, waiting for someone to notice. No one did. And that pattern, as I would later realize, followed me well into adulthood, until everything finally came to a head. By the time I hit my late 20s, I had learned to survive in the shadows, but I also discovered something important. I didn't need their approval to define my worth. I moved out of the house at 22, rented a tiny apartment in Newark, and threw myself into software engineering. My work became my refuge. I loved the quiet satisfaction of building something tangible, something mine, where no one could diminish me. I still talked to my family, of course, but the conversations always carried a subtle undercurrent of judgment. Every achievement was met with a faint sigh or a comparison. "That's nice, Ethan, but Lauren just got promoted to director," or "Max just bought a car without a loan, you should try that too." It was exhausting, but I learned to smile and nod. Their approval felt impossible to earn. I got my first real break when I started my own software company at 28. It was stressful, and at times I questioned if I could pull it off, but slowly the business grew. I bought my first house, furnished it with my own hands, and started to feel proud of my independence. Yet every family event reminded me of my place in their eyes. My dad would casually drop hints that success without a family tie didn't count. Mom would comment on how I never helped enough at family gatherings. Even Lauren and Max would tease me, sometimes joking, sometimes cutting deeper than they realized. Then came the subtle warnings about the future. Dad, who had always favored Lauren, began making comments about the responsible children who would inherit the estate. "You need to think about where you stand in the family, Ethan," he said, casually one evening, while we were helping him sort through old tax papers. I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking, but something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. It wasn't just about money. It was about recognition, validation, and finally having a chance to exist as more than the forgotten son. I wanted to feel like I mattered in my own family. I wanted them to see me. But the years of invisibility had left me wary. I realized that if I wanted their approval, I would always be walking a tightrope, and I wasn't sure I could keep balancing anymore. Little did I know, the real test of all those years of silence was coming faster than I imagined, and it would force me to confront every childhood wound I had carefully hidden under a veneer of polite smiles. Last year, everything changed. My father had a mild stroke, nothing life-threatening, but enough to make us all think about the future. Suddenly, conversations that had been background noise for decades became front-page news. Who's taking care of Dad? Who deserves what? Who will carry on the family legacy? I tried to stay calm. I had my own life, my own responsibilities. But one evening, Dad's lawyer called me. My heart sank before I even answered. "Ethan, your father has made adjustments to the will," the lawyer said. I could hear the hesitation in his voice. You won't be receiving anything from the estate." I laughed nervously. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" "Yes," he said softly. "Your father feels Lauren has been the most responsible, and he thinks Max should have a head start. You've been distant, Ethan. He doesn't feel you've contributed enough to the family." I hung up before I could say more. My hands were shaking. Not because of the money. I have savings, a house, my career. It was because, once again, my parents were erasing me, like they had for my entire life. When I confronted them at dinner that night, the tension was thick. Mom gave a weary sigh. "Ethan, you're making this about yourself. Your father's just trying to protect the family reputation." "Protect the family reputation?" I snapped. "You mean make sure Lauren looks perfect and I disappear? Is that it?" Dad's face tightened. "Ethan, you're being dramatic. We've always treated you fairly. Maybe you just misremember things. Lauren has always had more talent. You should accept it and stop causing tension." I felt the familiar wave of shame I had carried since childhood. But this time, something in me shifted. I couldn't take it anymore. All those birthdays, trophies, and achievements that were minimized, all the small humiliations and constant comparisons, I wasn't going to swallow them again. That night, I went to bed feeling a mix of anger, hurt, and disbelief. I realized this wasn't just about a will. This was a lifetime pattern. Me fading into the background, their perfect image untouched, and me, the invisible son, blamed whenever I tried to step forward. For the first time, I understood that if I wanted to survive emotionally, I couldn't continue letting them define me. I needed to face them, and not politely, not quietly, but with the full truth of how they had treated me. A week after the lawyer's call, we had a family dinner. One of those everyone's here, so let's pretend everything is perfect kind of nights. Mom cooked her usual roast chicken. Lauren wore a dress that shimmered under the chandelier. Max was joking loudly, and Dad sat at the head of the table, looking exactly like the patriarch of a perfect family. I felt my stomach tighten. I knew this was it, the moment I could no longer hide behind politeness. When the food was served and the usual small talk started, I cleared my throat. "Can we talk?" I said, my voice shaking at first, but growing steadier. All eyes turned to me. Mom gave that sigh, the one that always meant he's about to make this about himself. I took a deep breath. I know the will has been updated, and I understand Dad wants to favor Lauren and Max, But I need to say something I've been holding inside for forever. I paused, letting it sink in. Lauren's eyebrows shot up, Max froze mid-laugh, and Dad frowned. I've spent my whole life trying to get your approval, to be seen in this family. Every birthday, every achievement, every little thing I did, it was minimized, ignored, or compared unfavorably. I've been invisible. And every time I spoke up, I was told I was too sensitive, too dramatic, or that I was ruining the family's reputation. That's gaslighting. That's manipulation. And I'm done living like that. Mom opened her mouth, probably to tell me I was overreacting. Dad's frown deepened, but I didn't back down. I looked at them all, my heart pounding. I am done apologizing for existing. I am done shrinking myself so the perfect family image stays intact. I have a life, I have achievements, I have worth, whether you see it or not. The room went silent. Lauren's jaw tightened, Max's grin faded, and Dad looked like he was trying to process a storm. I could feel the tension crackle like static electricity. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice quieter than usual. Ethan, Don't, I interrupted, gently but firmly. I don't need your validation. I never did. And the fact that you think you can erase me from your life, from your will, doesn't change who I am. I'm not your shadow anymore. For the first time in my life, I felt a surge of relief. The anger, the pain, the years of invisibility, they didn't vanish, but they didn't control me anymore. I had said my truth. I had drawn a line. And unlike every other time in my life, I wasn't apologizing for it. That night, I left their house and felt lighter than I had in decades. For the first time, I realized something profound. I didn't need their approval. I never had. After that night, things changed in ways I didn't expect. I didn't get any apologies, not from Mom, not from Dad, not from Lauren or Max. In fact, at first, it was awkward silence. At family gatherings, conversations became stilted, like everyone was treading carefully around me, afraid I'd say something that cut through their illusions. But for once, I didn't care. I started setting boundaries. I stopped showing up to dinners that felt like performances, stopped answering calls that were thinly veiled attempts to guilt me. I focused on my company, my house, my friends, and my partner. And you know what happened? Life went on, and it was lighter than it had ever been. I realized that for years, I had been carrying the weight of their image of perfection, trying to fit into a mold that wasn't mine. Letting that go felt like breathing for the first time. Meanwhile, the perfect family facade began to crack, almost quietly, without me needing to interfere. Lauren had a messy divorce, which revealed cracks in her carefully curated image of success. Max got into legal trouble, which shook the family's sense of control. Dad's health worsened again, more than anyone expected, and suddenly, the family they tried to present to the world started to look vulnerable and flawed. And through it all, I didn't have to step in or fix anything. I could just watch, knowing I wasn't responsible for maintaining their image anymore. The strangest feeling, though, was freedom. For the first time, I didn't measure my worth by their approval. I celebrated my own wins, a new client at work, finishing a complex project, a weekend with friends, and felt genuine pride. No one minimized it, no one compared it. And even though I still carry some scars from the past, I feel stronger, more grounded, and, importantly, seen by the people who actually matter. I know they probably won't ever change completely. They may never acknowledge the years of favoritism or the damage they caused. But I've learned that I don't need their recognition to validate my life. The family I once longed to impress no longer has that power over me. I have my own life, my own happiness, and my own voice, and that is enough. For the first time in decades, I feel like I belong to myself, and that, I think, is victory. It's been months since that confrontation, and I feel lighter than I ever imagined. I still remember the sting of being invisible as a kid, the trophies ignored, the birthdays that felt like chores. But now, those memories are just that, memories, not chains. I don't attend every family gathering anymore, and I don't need to. I have my own life, my own achievements, and people who truly see me. The perfect family image they clung to is unraveling on its own, and I'm no longer responsible for holding it together. I'm learning to celebrate myself, to speak my truth without fear, and to finally let go of the approval I never received. For the first time, I belong fully to myself. And that, I realize, is freedom.